Computer. And hello, and a very warm welcome to you to another webinar. I am so excited today. I have been attempting to line this one up for quite a long time, about 6 months. And I will be honest with you, some of the reasons why it hasn't happened is I've been a little overwhelmed with the amount of stuff I'm doing with you guys. And I also just wanted to find the right person who was going to be able to cover this topic for me. So we will obviously be talking to Liz a lot, and we'll introduce her in a second. So look, for those of you who are a little bit new, there are two scenarios. You're either watching this live. If you're watching this live, you may put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. If you're watching this on YouTube, please put your questions in the comments box, and we will get back to you from there. I do not see those every day, but we will get back to you. If you have any questions, I will of course get Liz to answer them for you. That's kind of it. Also, oh yes, if you are now watching this on YouTube, do subscribe to our channel. We've loads of great stuff, and we're adding to it on a very regular basis. So if you want to stay up to date with what we're doing and what's going on, and getting really good information about transgender, healthcare, fitness, all that kind of stuff that we're covering, then just hit the subscribe button. Right, there you go. Sail over. So today I am joined by the wonderful Liz Ridgway. Now, before I get her to introduce herself, which I will do, oh, that was a very good wave. I like that. Slow motion and perfect. Brilliant. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ray Lavery, and I run the Trans Matters worldwide, and also the Trans London Meetup group. And I do that with Jess, who's not with us here today, but I'm sure she'll be watching the recording. So yeah, so that's it. So today we are going to be talking about fitness and health, and how to get that perfect body for MTFs. And I am delighted to bring in Liz Ridgway. She and I have had a couple of really good chats over the last month or two, and I'm just thrilled to bring her on. But rather than me attempting to introduce her, because she knows herself significantly better than I do, I'm going to ask Liz to do that. So Liz, first of all, very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for coming on and agreeing to do this with me. So thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm honoured to be in a fantastic room such as this. And yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you. We thank you, really, is the thing. Now, Liz, can you tell us, maybe we'll start off by can you tell us just a little bit about yourself? So, look, an introduction as to who you are, and I guess why you're the right person for this particular job.
Thanks, Ray. So hello, everyone that's watching. It's a great pleasure to be here. So I'm a fitness professional. I've been working as a qualified personal trainer for about 6 years now. I've had a much longer history in the health and wellness fitness business, probably 20-25 years. I'm also a campaigner and advocate for transgender people, and I have a history of broadcasting and some public speaking. I've worked directly with organisations and individuals to enhance the lives of LGBTQ+ people through inclusion, sport, health and wellness. I came from a kind of competitive sports background, or a sports background. In actual fact, I think, much earlier in my life, sports was the thing that saved me. And I was appointed to the Australian Football League England governing body, and I was their policy lead, or policy and documents lead. So I wrote trans inclusion policies for them. And obviously sat on their committee. I've also worked at the Gym Group, which is a massive health and fitness commercial organisation, and I sat on their diversity and inclusion working group panel. So that was to help welcome people from different backgrounds, and particularly the focus for myself and the group I was working with LGBTQ+, and I consulted on their trans inclusion policy. And I am a founder of the Sussex Swans Australian Rules Football women's team, which was something I started with 2 other women. There's now a squad of 35 women playing around the country. And and I'm a newly appointed director of TransCan Sport, which is an organisation down in Brighton and the South Coast that organises activities specifically for trans plus people. And yeah, I'm one of the only, I think there's 2 trans feminine PTs in the UK. I'm one of them, and so I'm working with all different types of people: trans, non-binary, queer, cis, straight. And I just love what I see when people get engaged in activity. I guess I'm not going to just hold it to like fitness environments, but I just love to see the opportunities that people can create for themselves when they become a little bit more active. So that's a little bit about myself.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff. And actually, we will be doing links at the end of this, but you'll need to put in that link to that activity group that you just talked about there, because I'm sure there'll be loads of interest in that. Now, look, obviously, you'll have to be close to the Brighton area to take part. There's no point if you're in Canada, wanting to be part of that. We'll be part of it, but it's a long flight. But we'll certainly put those links in there. So that's loads, Liz. It really is. It's incredible. How do you have time to even do any PT with all of that stuff that you're doing here? It's quite incredible. So tell me something. You had mentioned there that you have a long history of sport, a long history of competitive sport. But how did you get into trans fitness? Like, what was it that made you go, right, this is the thing I'm going to do?
Yeah, I think it's so at the beginning of my transition. So we're talking in the noughties, the early 2000s is when I started to explore my transition. Now, I've known all my life, 5 years, 6 years old, I was gender expansive, didn't have language for it. And yeah, pre-transition, I was heavily into gym work, muscle building, body transformation. And then there was that period when I decided I was going to finally realize my authentic self and be Liz. And gyms and fitness environments weren't very welcoming at all. So there was a period of my transition where I stayed away from those kind of enclosed spaces. And so I continued to participate for myself. So it was very much kind of running orientated. But then once I'd kind of, let me say, do we ever finish our transition? I don't know. But there was a point at which I said to myself, I'm going to start to try and live my authentic self. And I joined a gym, and I started helping some of my other trans friends with their fitness journeys. And it was like, Liz, you have to do this. So there was an opportune moment when I walked away from, I'll just call it a transition job. So I walked away from that, and I knew exactly what I needed to do, which was to go away and formalize my experience with a qualification. And so that's 6 years ago. So and from there, it was like great to be able to join a commercial organization that welcomed me. So that kind of blew my mind as well. So I guess that's kind of where it started. And then there was obviously my own experience of being quite muscular pre-transition, and now, developing and transforming my body the way that I wanted it to be, the way I felt most comfortable. So yeah, there's been a bit of a journey for me, but I'm super happy where I'm at now. And I've gone a little way along in the age levels. And so, there's other things I talk about level as opposed to age, but
thank you for that. I appreciate that.
There's stuff that I'm starting to talk about in terms of longevity, and the things I need to do is I go along that level. So yeah, that's basically how I got into it. So
yeah, great. And I'm delighted you decided to take the mantle up, because it's one of those things that, as you said, there aren't many people who are experts in this and who actually go out of their way to serve the trans community, because we are different. I mean, we all know we're different, but when it comes to fitness and all the different things that we deal with, we are different, and we also have very different mindset things. And I know we're going to talk about that, a little bit later as well, but it's a big thing. And I love what you were saying there about, early stage when you were starting your transition, you were like going, well, I don't want to go to a gym. I don't want to be in that environment, because it kind of feels like you're putting yourself in a position where you're going to be in trouble. Somebody's going to say something. I mean, someone says something, no big deal. But as long as that's as far as it goes, you can never guarantee that, So it's a big deal when you're either pre-transition, pre-medical transition, or in that process of transitioning where the outside world isn't quite sure where to put you. It's amazing to see that there's someone there who can actually support them. So again, thank you for that, and thank you for being brave enough to join the gym, because I hear this a lot. I hear it a lot from the trans guys as much as I hear it from the ladies, and obviously non-binary too. But these guys are particularly big on going to the gym, and they're like, going, I don't go near the change rooms. I just go in, I do my thing, and I leave. So it's a thing. We all know it's a thing. So
Mm.
let's take this one in stages, I guess. So we're kind of talking about it now, but let's talk about the pre-hormone. Now, the pre-hormones, or the pre-medical transition, if you like. This is the one where we are feeling our worst, where we don't look our best, where we are usually uh, uh, bouldering ourselves up by either eating a lot of chocolate, drinking a lot of alcohol, eating a lot of food that we shouldn't be, and going, I'm not good, basically we don't like ourselves very much, and we're not treating ourselves very well. So what is it that you can do when you're at that stage to kind of get yourself into a place where you're moving towards getting the body shape that you are actually looking for?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, isn't it? We almost go through, we're teenagers, aren't we, when we first start, and it's like,
Yeah.
let's drink, let's eat lots of food that's going to be a little bit unhelpful if we're trying to do things. I mean, I'm going to try and stay away from stereotypes here, but I think you know there's lots of things. We feel intimidated about going to a gym because there aren't space. We don't feel we're welcomed, or
Yeah.
there's not space for us. I started my pre-hormone was finasteride, which stopped my hair falling out basically, and it's also used for enlarged prostates. So there's a kind of a double thing, but it does actually start to level off some, let's say, exaggerated forms of testosterone. So that
Mm.
was my first kind of foray into hormones. For me, it was about being healthy and
Mm.
fit for surgery later on. Now, I had no idea that my surgery and my pathway was going to take 6 or 7 years to get to that point.
Mm.
Um, so for me, it was about uh, cardiovascular work. So there was stuff that I could do by myself. So I took up walking, running, although I was still doing this stuff, but this predominantly became my first activity. I mean, any kind of activity that gets you away from, I guess, being sedentary, so is going to help with being fit for surgery. I know there's a lot of gatekeeping around. If you're on the NHS pathway, if you're lucky enough to be on the NHS pathway with all the delays, they're going to start throwing BMI in front
BMI's
of
that you?
you.
Yeah.
So that's body mass index, which has a lot of question marks around it. But I think for me, it was about reducing my overall weight because I'd put on a little bit of weight. You
See, this is
know,
the thing, right? I'll be honest, I know you're on a float, but because this is a bugbear of mine. This BMI thing drives me bananas. It really
mm,
does. It's not body mass index, because if you are, let's just say that you're a bodybuilder, let's just say you're a cis guy bodybuilder and your body fat is at 5% and you are looking fantastic. But
mhm,
because you've got so much extra muscle, your body mass index basically lists you as obese,
mhm.
when obviously the complete opposite is true. I think it should be on fat percentages, much more so than body mass index, because it gives a much better indication as to how a person lives their life. Just a bugbear.
I mean, I'd,
Otherwise,
I'd I'd even take it down to blood pressure, your ability to absorb oxygen
hmm,
and what's it, exhale carbon dioxide. For me, there's a much better way of looking at it. It's a bit more scientific instead of putting this, because you're absolutely right. Somebody who has put on quite a lot of muscle. I've got a client, and they're a cisgender person, but they've had issues with fertility program, because of they're muscular. So I think it's a really unfair way, and I'd rather see a more scientific evaluation taken place for that. But I think we digressed a little bit. But yeah, it's a really, really good point about BMI.
I
So
had to have a little mini rant there. Sorry about that.
no, it's fine. I mean, listen, in terms of, if we're talking about trans feminine people, I guess huge kind of diversity in our community. But I think what I'd be saying is, whatever you can do that's activity based, it doesn't need to be in a gym. It could be riding a bike. It could be walking. I made some choices. I make daily choices about what I'm going to do. I could catch a bus to go to a client, but I choose to walk. So these kinds of things, any kind of activity. If you're working from home and you're at a desk all day, are you able to adjust your working height? Are you able to work at height? So with a raised desk, that kind of stuff. So all of those things kind of work into how we can elevate our activity levels. And I guess, trying to get the right body shape is, let's go with what you have at the moment, and let's get the best out of what you currently have. So I'd be asking people to kind of like think about their food choices, and get themselves active. And I think that's kind of where my journey many years ago started. I had this period of sedentary life, drinking big meals at lunchtime, and it wasn't until I started to become a bit more active that I started to lose weight again and get back to a kind of a size that I was really comfortable with. So I think that's kind of, there's the kind of things that you can do. And also remembering, when we're out in nature or taking walks, it does feed into a much better mental health state, considering all the pressures that are on us at the moment in the current environment, et cetera, and waiting lists and so forth. So pre-hormones, it's a bit difficult sometimes, but you need to work with what you've got. And if you can elevate your activity levels, then that's a great start for you. Get yourself ready for whatever.
I think that's the thing. That's the thing. Now, there's a couple of things come through which are very relevant to what we're saying. So I'll read them out in a second. But the thing is I think sort of when you're at that point where you are not treating yourself very well and you are sedentary, it's very hard to do something. It's very hard to do anything. Like, you are not motivated. You not feel like you want to get up in there. And the fact that, you think, oh, well, if I go to a gym, it's just not going to be a good environment. That's just not helping yourself. So I think to some cases, a lot of these fitness fanatic guys have done us all a great justice. Along the lines, they'll go, build a six pack in 30 days, lose 25 pounds of body fat in a week. And all of these ridiculous claims that are coming up here. Now, if you actually talk to anybody who does this on an ongoing basis, it takes years to get to that position, because it's not a fad diet. It's not I did this great thing and I was there and I did this amazing fitness plan and I was there for a month and I lost 3 pounds and I feel a little bit better. So it's just the starting point. It's just the real bodybuilders and the real fitness people and the real athletes, they take years to get into that position. But we get sold this idea that within a month or within a 3-month period that you can look like, I don't know, Jennifer Aniston or Brad Pitt. I mean, not a chance.
I think that the realistic point of view here is that they're selling themselves. They're selling it's a hook, and most of the time, this stuff does take a while, and it's going to rely on you being consistent. And I understand this. When I started, I was on pretty high levels of antidepressants, so SSRIs. I could drink like a fish. I could literally drink a couple of bottles of wine and still stand and walk around. I became aggressive. A little bit aggressive, so there were behavioral changes with me. So it's super tough, and in today's climate, I sometimes ask myself the question, where are my fellow trans feminine people? And I know that a lot of us don't feel safe, going to venues and going to gyms and that kind of stuff. I understand that. So it's one of the things I feel good about where I am, is that I know instantly, but just my presence, people feel a bit more comfortable. So,
it's a big thing. So, I mean, I guess the thing is if you're pre-transition or you're at the early stages of getting back into this lifestyle, remember, you said it already, that you make this choice every single day, what it is that you're actually doing, and give yourself a break. Stop going for these mad fad diets that are impossible. Nobody can keep them, including the bodybuilders. Nobody can keep these things. So be reasonable with yourself. You already know what you like to eat, and you should be able to eat everything. It's just in reasonable measures. And we'll touch on this, I know, a little bit more, but it's just, I think the biggest thing is be easier with yourself. Stop expecting amazing results within a month. Give yourself time. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And that is the thing to remember. But do something, anything, do something. Don't just go, oh, I
Yeah.
can't. You can go for a walk, take a break, walk between bus stops. Exactly what you were saying there. That's what I did. I was so annoyed with myself having sat as a couch potato for 3 years. I was like, it'd be grand. Swat grand.
Yeah, and
Let's start small.
there's also, listen, I understand some people are really isolated location wise. I'm really, really fortunate. I live in a city where there's 11,000 trans people. And so we have some groups and we're able to support one another and, taking walks with, so we can feel safe and be safe, taking walks or finding parks that we can facilitate doing some gentle exercise.
Mm.
You know, that's something to look into and consider. We really need to, physiologically, whether we're trans or not, we were designed to stand, to move, to walk, and to run. And if we spend too much time, laterally, it's not going to be helpful for us. And I know
Yeah.
it's a really tough step to get through, but if you can start preparing yourself. I turned up to the gender clinic in London as my former self to show them my transition. So I'd already kind of backed off my heavy duty muscle building kind of stuff, and I was experimenting with the different forms of kind of work that I could do.
Mm.
So this is where my running and my walking started to really help, because I was able to kind of transform my body, pre-transition, and so I was in a good position when I began my theoretical, the moment I stepped out the door as Liz, I was in a much better shape than I was maybe, a few years beforehand. But
Yeah. I mean, I think we all kind of go through that. It's just it's the most difficult part of transition is that pre-transition. It is the one where you don't get any help. So look, there's some questions in here. Now, some of them are very specific questions. I'm going to answer them as we kind of go along because we're kind of talking about this. There was also somebody called Sarah who had her hand raised, but if she could just put her question or her comment in the chat, then that would be great, please, Sarah, if you could do that. Somebody here is saying that the NHS surgeon has told them to lose weight as that will give them more working space between their thighs. Okay, I have no idea who your surgeon is. They could potentially be saying the right thing. The lower your body fat is going into an operation, the better chance you have of it going well, because then the lower your heart rate, the better your blood pressure, and the surgeon will know what they are talking about. So that would be the thing to concentrate on. But we will be talking about methodologies to actually do that a little bit later on. So I'll just answer that one. I've no one's ever told me that one before. Somebody else is asking here, you should have been on the hormone ones, ladies here, that you're going to the gender identity clinic in the UK, and if my BMI isn't good, will that affect my ability to start transition? No. Will my transition get delayed, such as consuming prescribed hormones? Uh, Probably not. So the BMI is not really a big deal when it comes to that, because there's plenty of cis guys on testosterone because that's what they're naturally built on, and there's lots of cis women on estrogen and progesterone, and they're fine. But what is a bigger deal is your liver, your heart, your blood pressure, thickening of your blood. That's a much bigger thing. So the gender hormone clinic they are the GIC. Oh yeah, GIC is slightly different to the gender hormone clinic. I beg your pardon. They might talk about your BMI, but it doesn't actually. There's no scientific evidence that it makes any difference apart from that side of things that I've already mentioned. And then the last one here, which is one Vicky has asked this question, but this is definitely one for you as well, Liz. And I will have a little caveat on there. So I'm 6 months post-op. Don't know what post-op this is, but I'm getting back into exercise. However, I'm experiencing discomfort on the surgery site. Is there any garments that will offer better support and minimize the discomfort? I will tell you something straight away. If you are 6 months post-op, you are probably far too early to be doing any exercise. Do not listen to your surgeon because they don't know. So if you were getting top surgery, we would say 10 months. if you were to have bottom surgery, minimum of a year before you attempt to do any exercise that is in any way going to lift your heart rate. The tears, the blood pressure, all of this kind of stuff, scarring, stretching, scarring, don't do it. Okay, yeah. So we now know it's bottom surgery, ladies. So vulvoplasty and a mainly running and a bit of cardio. Seriously, too early. Too early. Allow your body to heal. What would you like to add to that, Liz?
Yeah. So I think sometimes there are some gatekeepers when it comes to surgery, which they might specify that your BMI is too high. And there's a lot of, as I said earlier, there's a lot of question marks about BMI and whether it's really a worthy, like what's the word? Whether it's a worthy kind of gauge to whether
Yeah,
somebody's or not. Now, I've met and worked with some very healthy, larger people, and I think my kind of encouragement to anybody would be to just be as fit as you can be, so that your recovery happens a little bit quicker. In terms of like exercising, yeah, obviously there's going to be at least 3 months of like keeping things really, really gentle. So for me, it was about 6 weeks that I just started walking longer walks outdoors. And post surgery for me was like dizziness. It took me a while to get back into it. So the exercise that I did was low impact. So it was walking, it wasn't running. And if I'd had a bicycle, that'd be something that I'd perhaps stay away from for a little while just because of the pressure from the seat, kind of, I guess common sense stuff. But, I didn't step up any of my activity until I was well past the 12-week mark. And then it wasn't until maybe probably even 6 months in that I attempted to do some running. So just because I wanted everything to stay where it was, so to speak, to stay where it had been put. So yeah, I take it really gently. Just remember, one of the best calorific exercises that you can do is walking. And we don't need to do high impact stuff. So that's just something to think about. Try and stay away from high impact stuff if you're returning to fitness post surgery.
yeah, for a while. It takes much longer to heal than you think.
Yeah,
I
you wouldn't
will.
want to do boot camp or Zumba or anything like that. So
No,
nice and
no.
gentle. It's the same as
Remember,
anybody that would have that kind of surgery if it was a hysterectomy or anything like that. Staying away from like high impact exercise for at least 6 months, I'd say.
well, so what she's saying is she's just past the 6 months post-op, and I guess her actual question was any garments that will offer better support. So hope have a think about that one. I will,
Mm.
while you're thinking about that, there was a comment back about the when I had mentioned about the low BMI, and I had made a comment about it being the lower your BMI. What I meant, it was in normal healthy ranges, not get your BMI down to ridiculously low levels where you are
No, no,
clearly
no, no.
very unhealthy. That's not
25,
what I meant.
25 and below. 25 is normally the target, but you know,
There you
any
go.
yeah, you want to be in a healthy body mass index. I had a test done and they said to me, Liz, your body fat percentage is too low. It's like, well, I'm happy with it. I'm going to stay there. So,
Mm,
but
good. Yeah, good. Super stuff. Okay. So what about age? All right. When it comes to fitness, um, you know, obviously things move a little bit differently when you're 22 than they do when you're 62. So how would that affect somebody who's maybe at that earlier stage of transition? Have you noticed that being a difference?
what do you mean? If that's an older person at the early stage or a
Yeah,
younger?
so in relation to getting fitness, getting out there, getting towards that place of getting the body shape that you're dreaming of.
Well, I think the younger we are, the more adaptable our bodies are to change. But I've decided I'm going to buck that trend. So I'm doing my best. I'm doing my very, very best. I think, listen, we're all so individual. I've seen some amazing results that some people have had with hormone therapy. Um, I guess, I obviously transitioned a little later in life, but I'm still super happy. where I'm at. You know, I haven't had any major issues, but I've I've had to stay away from some vices. So that when I say, you know, it's going to be alcohol, I had to realize one day alcohol wasn't going to do me a lot of good, and it was also going to reduce the effectiveness of the hormone therapy. Um, Fortunately, it started to make me feel a bit not feeling at my best each day after I'd maybe had a few glasses of wine. Then I'd felt a bit rubbish for a couple of days, and I just got tired of that feeling. So, you know, I might have a glass of wine once a week. I had one last night just with a friend very quietly, but that's it, you know. So that's the kind of thing I kind of get onto. And then I've had some other experiences. I think we've all got potential, you know, we've still got a beating heart, you know, we still, you know, we still have opportunities where we can transform our bodies. I've seen older people transform their bodies in remarkable ways, but it does take some determination. It's going to take some changes to your lifestyle. And, you know, I'd always advise people to start off incrementally. So think about how you're going to facilitate those changes in your life and take one step at a time. You know, I would not ask a client to, unless they were super keen, but I would not ask a client to go ahead and engage in a fitness program as well as a nutritional program as well as something else. You know, it'd be like walking out the door your first day of your transition as your new self. You're starting a fitness program, a nutritional program, a new job, a new identity. I mean, something's going to fall off on the way. And we all know that, you know, long-term change is much more successful when we do make those changes incrementally. I think, yes, you are younger. If you are younger, you'll probably experience some more moderately higher effects or changes. But, you know, later on in life, you still got a potential to make some good transformational changes to your life. So I guess that's all I can say. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does make sense. And here's the thing: one of the biggest fears that we all have, because there's some comments that are coming in on this as well, is that we're not going to get the changes that we want on hormones. Okay, it's just not going to work for us. We're too old, whatever. Now, look, I was 48 when I transitioned. I'm now, well, 47. I'm now pushing 50. And the thing is we actually have an advantage, and this is definitely in the fitness sphere. So we have an advantage because we are going to get hormones at a relatively high level. So, like you're going through puberty again, and it kind of reverses the clock a little bit because it allows you to have the energy of a teenager. There's good and bad about that. But as the hormone that you want takes over, it reduces the effect of the other one, but it's at a level that's not for your age. Okay, because there's a lot of doctors out there who prescribe it for your age, and that's the wrong thing to do because you didn't go through puberty at 50. You went through puberty at 16. And so you need to match that level to really have the best effect. And yes, different levels work for different people. Everybody is completely different. You know what works for them, whether they want the changes slow or fast. Yeah, we know there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. But what it means is it resets your clock a little bit and it allows you to do more as a lady or do more as a chap if that is where your hormones are. It takes a while for that to kick in. It's not immediate. Don't think that you can just do a couple of patches and you're there. It's going to take about a year or two before, you know, all of that stuff really starts to take effect. So
Yeah. Yeah.
on that note, right, what about blockers? Okay, how do blockers affect? Because that's obviously a huge thing when you're, you know, a trans woman. Because yes, you're getting estrogen, but you've got to block the testosterone. How does that affect you? The
Yeah, it's
fitness?
an interesting one. I mean, I went on to a GRNH agonist. Anyway, it was Gazerolin, you know, so I had this massive, great injection put into the subcutaneous fat around my belly, switched off production of testosterone. I did find, yeah, I mean, that was a pretty bit of a roller coaster ride, I guess, when estrogen was the most dominant hormone in my body. Um, Listen, you know, I've had good results in terms of, you know, hormones. Blockers, Yeah, I mean, anytime we're going to adjust or play with the endocrine system in our body, we're going to have some behavioral changes and I guess some metabolic changes as well. So the rate at which we burn energy or use energy. Now, I'm not medically trained. I don't have a background in this research, but you just need to understand that, a very significant portion of the population, 50% of the population, is going to go through menopause, which is a really super significant change in their life. And so there's behavioral, hormonal, which are potentially going to slow us down on what we want to do. We're going to be making different choices. So I don't know. I guess for me, I did put on weight initially when I had those blockers. And whilst I was adjusting to, estrogen as well. So I was quite lightheaded, a little bit dizzy. I still am. But yeah, I think that, I guess, from trans feminine point of view, the blockers definitely helped me in terms of, I found my physical transition started to quicken pace, I guess. But it meant that I had to make some other adjustments because I started putting on weight a little bit more than I had beforehand. But then the other part of me was thinking, well, I do want some redistribution of body fat and more around my hips, I guess, and less around my torso. So there were things like that. So I guess, yeah, I mean, for me, blockers were a significant step, and they help to facilitate that kind of transformation a little bit, along the
For
way.
the body fat distribution, which kind of gave you that shape. But I guess you needed to be in a shape where you could see the body fat distribution. That's the thing, that
Yes.
being in that normal range makes it a little bit easier and a little bit harder if you're not inside of that normal range, which I
Yeah.
know we got that. But so, and this is a question that I get asked an awful lot. I'm not a fitness person, professionally, but how long does it take for this stuff to take effect? Like, and you know, how long do, this whole period where you're going from, testosterone is a major thing, and then estrogen becomes the major thing, and you've done the blocking of the testosterone, and now you're on this, and possibly you're adding some progesterone as well. You know, how do you manage your fitness during that period? Because so much is changing, so much of your body is changing, and it's like, at what point do I stop doing what works for cis men to what works for cis women? Like, that's like, what's the point where I change, or is there a point, or do I just have to go through this period and just keep doing the cardio and the hits and stuff like that? And I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I mean, I think as soon as you're ready to, as soon as you've made your decision to transition, for me, it was like, okay, well, I need to change what I'm doing in the gym or
Mm.
outdoors, my fitness regime, I guess. So for me, it was keeping that cardiovascular, whatever that looked like. As I said earlier, it could be riding a bike, it could be walking. So for me, it was a combination of walking and running. And then in the park, I started focusing on lower body exercises. So I gave my upper body a big rest. Um, Obviously, pre-transition, I was also using supplements like protein powders to supplement my
Mm.
input, so calorific input. So I let all of that stuff go. I saved a hell of a lot of money. um, but I started to focus on lower body exercises pretty much straight away as soon as I decided that this is what the way I was going to go, and I kept my cardio going. So for me, it was about 4 to 5 days a week that I was doing some kind of exercise. I was making choices about either catching the bus part of the way or walking. I kept things really basic, but I tried to stay away from things that helped me, like get from point A to point B. So if I was able to, I'd take a set of stairs as opposed to the lift. Um, I'd I'd walk as opposed to catching the bus or getting on the tube if that was or that public transport. So I started to make little choices like that, which helped with my cardio. And then, as I said, I started to concentrate on my lower body exercises, so squats, reverse lunges, all of that kind of stuff that that would start building a bit of muscle around my lower body. And I think I started engaging with a bit of yoga as well, so flexibility, range of motion, that kind of stuff. So I was already starting to get into it before I'd had before I'd even started talking blockers, finasteride, anything like that. So I was kind of already on my way, I guess.
And is that how do you follow that sort of a process with your clients as well then, who are at a similar stage, is to get them to work on that lower body, keep the cardio going?
Yeah. So what I talk about is we need to continue to work on all of our body. And so if you are trans feminine, maybe consider shifting any kind of focus onto your lower body exercises, so squats, deadlifts, hip thrusts. I mean, we're talking gym stuff here, but if you think about in a park, then you can do body weight squats, you can do reverse lunges in a park, forward lunges. What else can we do? There's quite a few things, body weight orientated. If you're in a gym and you're able to work in a gym, then focus two or three sessions a week on your lower body if you can, and then maybe one session on your upper body, because we want to maintain good posture. We want to work on our upper body. We want to maintain our range of motion, because the last thing we want to do is to be, huddled in this kind of position for the rest of our lives. So still doing your upper body exercises, but just do that really gently, and perhaps add that into one day a week. It just depends. I guess if you manage to go to the gym 3 days a week, then make 2 of those sessions lower body, and that third session, then make it a gentle upper body. So low weight.
Core, I would assume as well, right? Core is being core muscles being huge. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So that's something that I would include into my workout. So, core stability, that's all going to be based around your, abdominal area, but it all feeds into your legs as well. So, and upper body as well, if you're able to do that. And that's not about doing crunches and sit-ups. That's something quite different, So, excuse me. So core stuff's quite subtle, really subtle kind of work. But it's a good point. Good point to make, Ray.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, at my age, for instance, if I'm not doing core stuff, I'm in trouble. I get back pain. Never mind the shape of body. It's just about getting up in the day. Getting on with my day. It's a big thing. So
core is a bit like the pot plant. It's the roots in the pot plant. And if you really want a healthy body, then you need to include core stability in any of the work that you're doing.
Okay. Now a few questions are coming in, and I know they're coming in mostly on getting rid of fat around the belly, but putting it on the backside. So that's a normal one. But I want to, if I add that one in to, how do you stay fit when you're at those earlier stages, or you're maybe not all the testosterone is blocked, and it shouldn't all be blocked anyway. How do you stay fit without building muscle, and how do you help yourself with that more feminine shape? Now, I know that there's genetics and diet play, frankly, a bigger role in this, but still, I'll throw the question at you anyway.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions in there.
Yes, there are. Yeah.
The first thing is I'm going to make this as gender neutral and as unoffensive as possible, but this is what I say to people, because I get it. So I don't want to bulk up, and I'll say, and this is my standard, do you have any idea how hard it is to bulk up? It really is quite difficult, and I think it's misinformation. And I think what you'll find is when you start to become more active, you will naturally start to burn calories, and that's probably going to be a percentage of it's going to be fat, and a percentage of it might be muscle. there's a few different ways that we can work out, and we can encourage our body to build muscle and tone in a certain way. So we have two types of muscle fibers: fast twitch or slow twitch. Fast twitch, if I said talk to you about sprinters, so sprinters and people that are engaged in explosive energy output, like, you know, a 100-meter sprinter, have a look at their body type. Now, they mostly all end up training their fast twitch muscle fibers, shorter, denser, and so they give that appearance of quite a muscular look. When you get to slow twitch fibers, they're longer, slender, and more endurance based. So guess what? Guess what I would be encouraging people to do is to try and do more endurance based, or even get their weight training in an endurance based zone. So that means lighter weight, higher reps. So, you know, in that kind of fitness environment. Outside, I'd be saying go for long, slow distance runs, however you maybe to do that, or even walking or cycling, and try and minimize periods of explosive energy if you can. I
What can
guess
you
that
do if you hate running? I hate running, and I get to this stage, my knees won't do it. So what do you do if you
yeah,
can't run?
with high impact. So it was just using that as an example, but there's
Mm.
cycling. If you've got access to a gym, then you could, you know, you could sit on a bike or cross trainer. Walking on a treadmill is good, is fantastic. Walking outdoors, and think about some of those other things that you can do, you know, that you know, they're involved in the outdoors. So like I said, you know, walking, if you're able to walk to the bus stop that's a few blocks away, if it's safe to do so. So all of these kinds of longer endurance kind of disciplines, that'd be a good way to kind of head towards if you can. Yeah, running's not everybody's thing. I mean, you know, pre-transition, I was running. And in my first month of transition, stepping out the door as Liz, I noticed a really horrific pain in my left foot. And it turned out that I had from all the running I was doing, I had a stress fracture and a metatarsal. So common runner's injury, which set me back a little bit. So, but I think you're kind of getting, hopefully, everybody's getting the idea that, you know, there are some things, if you go for endurance based stuff. So like I said, cycling, longer distance walking, lower intensity, and stay away from interval training, powerlifting, I guess. I don't know. I mean, these are some things, you know,
Or
strength
just play
training.
some games, like play some games, play football, maybe not rugby, play tennis, play, yeah, well, golf. I don't know, that's a lot of walking. But you know, stuff that doesn't that is more based around fitness, around heart rate, cardio than anything else. That's a bit more fun because running can be boring. I believe you me,
Yeah,
I get it. You know,
it's not
swimming
exhausting.
also. You know, low impact. So, what if you're doing very well on your fitness journey and you're just trying to get rid of that last bit, say around the tummy? You know, what would be your advice then?
Yeah, I mean, it's a forever difficult one. I mean, this is my biggest frustration. So I think end of the day, you know, there's going to be loads of it's going to be based around nutrition, and it's going to be input versus output. So input being the food that we're eating, output is our exercise. And you know, for me, it's been a real kind of journey to find the nutrition that's suitable for my body type, and not necessarily to what my taste buds or my addiction to, you know, to sugar or anything else is like. So, you know, my there's a couple of kind of things that we need to follow. If you really want to go onto a calorific restricted diet, then you need to work with your kcals, so your baseline metabolic number of calories you need to stay at your same body weight, and you can find that out by doing a body composition test, or, you know, there's some machines at gyms, or you can find them at chemists, but you need to understand where your body composition is. and from there you should be able to establish what your resting metabolic calories, number of calories are, just to stay as you are. And so some people advocate this way. So you obviously reduce your calories to lose weight, and you would increase them if you wanted to put on weight. For me, my journey's been a little bit different. It's been based around what foods do to my blood sugar level and my insulin production. And the older we get, you asked me a question a bit earlier about, how does age affect things? Well,
Yeah.
the older we get, whether it's our liver's inability to process things, it could be a couple of conditions that we have. I mean, tune in and find a nutritionist that you can watch or listen to or trust, and they'll probably start talking to you about fatty liver condition, which is something that most people will get at some stage, and it's just the inability of the liver to process the nutrients that we're feeding ourselves. And then for me, it was discovering that, I'm very close to type 2 diabetes, and I need to keep a regular check on that. So it doesn't matter whether it's sugar or not, but certain foods have an effect on my blood sugar level. In fact, they may as well be, I may as well be eating sugar. So, yeah, I'm almost kind of following a diabetic keto plan nutrition for myself. So I need to stay away from things that spike my insulin. And
a lot of carbs do that. White carbs. It's the GI that you're talking about here. So
I mean,
that's so
GI,
spike sugar.
glycemic index is a little bit tricky to understand, but
Yeah.
it's what happens to your insulin, and so I've probably got a bit of insulin resistance. And insulin resistance, one of the first signs of it is difficult fat to a little tie around the belly. And so, it really is a case of looking at what you're eating, and if there's any way that you can, my advice would be, if there's any way that you can look at what the food is doing to your body. And we are all different. We all respond to chemicals and medication and food in a different way. And I'm not an advocate, I'm not advocating for a specific, modality, but somewhere where you can understand more about what food is doing to your blood sugar levels. So for me, it's almost like I'm pre-diabetic, but, this is the way that, I've been looking at things. For example, anything that's says no sugar, but it's sweet, it's going to do the same thing to your blood sugar level. So aspartame, what are the other ones? Somebody aspartame.
There's loads of fake sugars that are like, even fructose and stuff like that will do it to you. So and if anything that says it's low fat, it's the only reason it tastes good is because it's been loaded with sugar, some version of sugar. So full fat is much better. Less of it, but more full fat.
There's one other there is nutrition, and remember, a lot of this is going to be, way up in the 70% of your body transformation is going to be based around what you're inputting. So you need to remember that anytime you're going to have alcohol, you're going to be lessening the effect of your hormones and your medication. Anytime you're taking it's stuff like that, you're using alcohol, for example, or sugar, that's going to lessen the effectiveness of your body to process your nutrients. So I'm not saying stop, but let's just readdress the balance. Moderation if you can, maybe on the weekend. We talk about cheat meals, and so I don't like to really talk about cheat meals, but just be mindful of what you're consuming. And one of the best things you can do is to create a 7-day food diary for yourself, just so you're aware, and jot everything down that you're consuming or putting into your body, and just see where you end up at the end of the week. Any decent nutritionist will ask you for a 7-day food diary. So that last little bit of I'm still working on that figure, but I'm a trans feminine PT. I'm learning to love my body for its kind of, I've got some muscles on my legs, and I love them. So
it's incredibly difficult for women to lose that last bit of fat. So anything sort of once you get down to 10%, which doctors will tell you you women should not be getting down below 10%. I don't know where they got that from, but you have a point on that one though. But
Yeah.
all women find that very tough, very, very tough. And also, if what and I've noticed this a little bit as well, is that once you have done bottom surgery, whereas you don't need blockers anymore, they tend to reduce your estrogen because obviously you don't need that much of a balance, but it takes you to a lower level. It almost puts you into a type of menopause. Now, as soon as a cis woman hits menopause, wow, does that tire appear, and it becomes really tough to get it off. And once they go back on HRT, then it becomes easier again. So the hormone thing has a very big thing to do. Now, if you're at that last 5% and you've been able to manage it to that point, you need to do something very serious there. You need to be talking about carb cycling, and maybe rather than sort of muscle building, because muscle burns a lot of fat as well, is maybe sort of, I don't know how you think about this, Liz, but kettlebell. So lightweight kettlebell, that type of a thing where you're using movement rather than explosiveness. So swings and, around the heads and those kind of ones, they're massive for fat burning. Also, everybody hates them, but burpees, my God, do they burn a lot of stuff? They're torture.
Yeah,
You're better off going for a run.
yeah.
Um,
Listen, if I was going to say something. There was one thing I was going to say that is going to feed into, this is a universal thing, and that is cortisol production or stress. So I know stuff's really difficult at the moment. I know we're being collectively pushed into a corner, but there's something that I could probably spend a whole seminar talking about, which is mindfulness and meditation. But if you were at lower stress levels, you'll probably find things work a little bit more advantageously. And just feeding on from what Ray was saying, if you are only thinking about doing some home gym stuff, then getting a lighter set of dumbbells and doing some squats, doing some reverse lunges, and maybe looking at a couple of 2 to 3 sets on your squat, maybe 12 to 15 repetitions is a really good place to start. So when I'm talking about being in that endurance zone, when we're talking about weight training, when we're doing power and strength, we're down at very heavy weights, low repetitions, 4 to 6 repetitions. And then we start to move into like muscle building, which is around 8 to 12. And then when we get up to like 15, lighter weights, more repetitions, you're in that endurance zone. So if it's something you're wanting to do at home, then by all means, get some kettlebells. And, that weight bearing exercise is going to help you with bone density as well. So, and that's really super, super important thing. The last thing you want is, osteopenia, the onset of osteopenia, which is something that I've noticed in a number of trans feminine people coming to see me. And we just work with that, without taking calcium supplements or anything like that. We do weight bearing resistance training. So, but also just to reinforce that packing on muscle is really tough thing to do. You have to be in the zone. You've got to be very, very disciplined. And so what most people experience most of the time is a little bit of fat loss, which might uncover. And remember, the fat's going to come off here first, legs as well, and it's going to come off the belly last. I'm sorry to say, we can't spot reduce. So just do your best and see if you can find a nice little balance with your nutrition and the stuff you're doing that's based around.
If it's that last bit, it's probably much more diet than it is exercise that needs to sort that out. I mean, that's what all the big bodybuilders will say when they're trying to get down to that 5%. They are literally starving themselves, but they don't do it they don't do it on an ongoing basis. They'll do fat loss, weight gain, fat loss, weight gain, and then they'll be in a holding period for as long because their bodies have to recover from that. And I know that's talking about cis men, but that's when you're talking about losing that last bit. That's the level you're talking about. It's very serious.
Can I just add something in there, Ray? And that is
Yeah.
there's a really over amplification of these perfect bodies. And
Yeah.
I work with people that do shows that go up on stage, and their 12 weeks leading up to that is hell. And it's their cutting phase, and they restrict themselves so dramatically. So try and find a zone that's comfortable for yourself, that's something that you can maintain, and that you're not going to be starving yourself, because we want to enjoy our lives, and we want to excuse me, move away from this over simplification and this over hyping promotion of perfect bodies. So
Yeah. So about 25% of people in the world go to the gym in the first world. That's 75% of the population who couldn't be bothered. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not doing football and stuff like that, but the majority of people are not that, you know, perfect woman. Look around at the women around you. They look very different to how a lot of trans women are going out of their way. Women don't bother with a lot of this stuff because they know how difficult it is, and they would just like being happy in who you are is a much bigger thing. Being in a healthy body where you're able to do everything that you want to do, where you're not, taking years off your life because of your blood pressure or your cholesterol levels and stuff like that. That's much more of a thing. And also, you were talking about a self mindset. By doing exercise, you just feel better. It makes you feel better about everything.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I talk about it being free drugs, but I don't want to it's endorphins. It's free drugs, it's dopamine and endorphins, and that's what we get the buzz from. We might be able to sleep a little bit better, but yeah, try if you can. I see so many, like, I see lots of women, assigned female at birth, and they have just there's such a diverse range of bodies. Some of them have tiny little pelvises, very square, straight bodies. Others are more curvaceous, I guess. We just need to try and adjust our mindsets and think about diversity a lot more, and that our bodies will fit, you know, fit into whatever category we want to, but just to try and move away from this concept of this is what I need to look like. Work with
Nobody does look like that. Even the guys who are in the magazines, they're all airbrushed. You know,
yeah.
they don't look like that on a normal day.
They'll go on a calorific restricted diet for a few days beforehand. They'll make themselves feel ill. Do you know what I mean? There's some really, I don't know.
Not
I think
healthy, basically. It's not healthy.
so.
No. So look, we've actually gone over the hour here, and Liz and I have a list of questions, but we've kind of managed to answer most of them. Um, so I mean, have you another minute? Because I wanted to talk about the boat dancing because you mentioned it there. Is that okay, Liz, to keep going a little bit? I hope. Sorry for you guys. I know that we said this would be an hour, but we're doing, I think, quite well here. So Liz and I were talking about bone density before we even started this, but Liz just mentioned it there, which reminded me of it. So there's a huge thing about bone density, particularly for trans women. We all know the what's going on in the newspapers at the moment and the political blah 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 blah. But from your experience or from your clients or anything that maybe you've been involved in, is there any weight to this bone density thing? And are there bone density changes once you go from testosterone to estrogen and you have your blockers and stuff like that? What's your take on that? The experience in it, I guess.
Well, thanks. It's a great question. It's a really, really good question. And I think there's a lot of, I mean, just thinking about 700, no, hang on, is it? Listen, I'm something like there's so much money that's been spent on misinformation around transgender us folks here and in the United States. So just in terms of, there was this thing about bone density, even for me. And initially, I'd started to have a few little breaks. Broke my finger playing sport. I've got some internal bling there. I started to have issues with my metatarsals, so fractures. Yes. So yeah, I was starting to get worried, and this is actually before I went back to the gym. It all started, my resistance training. So let me say, it's probably about 7 years I've been doing resistance training now, 3-4 times a week, and I participated in International Olympic Committee research here at the Brighton University School of Sports Science, and I spent 7 hours there, and I had a DEXA scan which did my bone density, my body fat composition, and I am just above the average in bone density. So
Average
I've
in bone density for what?
for all women. So
For women.
yeah, so all women. So my bone density is just a little bit elevated what the average athlete participating in this study. So
So
interesting
your
to see.
bone density is in basically the normal ranges for women.
Correct. Yeah, my bone density is normal. My hemoglobin is exactly where a cisgender funicular woman would be. So and I do take a small dose of testosterone at the moment. So maybe my testosterone is slightly elevated, but you know, I have found, and all the research that I've read, understood, is that the older we get, the more weight bearing exercises we should undertake. So it's why you're starting to see some of my clients are getting older and older, actually. Well, they are obviously chronologically, but the more that are
Yeah.
coming to me are actually older people because they understand that weight bearing exercises are fantastic things to help build your bone density or either stop the degradation and maintain it where it is. So we're talking osteopenia, osteoporosis, etc. Osteopenia being that first stage and osteoporosis being the latter stage. So yeah, all of the evidence is pointing towards doing resistance training. And like I said, it's, pushing a weight, it's pushing a weight, whether you're doing it in an endurance way, whether you're doing it in strength or powerlifting kind of way. That kind of stuff is really good, so my bone density is spot on. They'll look at your hip first and to see where that hip joint is. I'd love to be able to show the pictures actually, but it was fascinating. And I think that study is still open. So if anybody that wanted to travel, then get in contact with, if anybody's interested, then find me or message me.
Do you know what? We'll put the link in the description so people will be able to see it. So yeah, we'll do that. But the point is that the bone density changed. It changed. And this is the major, pardon the pun, bone of contention is that trans women's bone density is the same as it was as a cis male. And so therefore you have an unfair advantage. But it turns out not to be true at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as if bone density was going to be an issue anyway. So that they'll come up with anything. They'll come up with anything to, to other us.
Oh, it was, by the way, this has been used before. So in the 50s, to stop Black athletes from being allowed into professional sports, they used bone density as the same excuse. Because the bone density, and it is true, the bone density is bigger, it's better, it's stronger, and it does, with that advantage. But obviously, if you're going to ban us, you have to ban everybody who has a higher bone density. So it's
Yeah. Well, it was interesting talking to the researcher once. We'd seen
yeah.
the researcher here at Brighton University. They saw that and said, yeah, it's your bone density maintenance is probably because of the resistance training you've been doing. But like I said, it's about 7 years since I've been doing that. So like since I began my transition before, this is, I've been on hormone therapy, and I think there were just question marks about I'm starting to experience bone fractures, that kind of stuff in my feet from running, so high impact. Why is it suddenly exponentially started to increase? And it's just been interesting to see now, like 10, 12 years later, that actually I've probably maintained and or increased my bone density a little bit just by doing some weight resistance training. But yeah, I think
Yeah, and while you may not want to be a professional athlete, it's actually just important to have decent bone density so that you can go on about your normal daily life. Brilliant. So listen, that I think we'll need to kind of halt it there because we could, you and I know for a fact, Liz, could talk all night. On my own, I could do that. But you are also a chatter, so I know that's the case. So I think we've answered pretty much all the questions. And by the way, there was some serious fan mail going on in the chat as well. Have a look on it later as well. But yes, so Liz, I have to say thank you so much for that. I think, when we're looking at this, it's use common sense, apply common sense, stop expecting so much out of yourself, and use not just exercise, but diet and mindfulness. All of those three things together will make a big difference. And it's about everything we're doing. Everything we are doing is about being happy in your life. That's what it's about. The exercise bit is only a small part, but you've heard from the experts now as to the best advice on what to do about it. Now, Liz, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that? Tell us all.
Okay, so I'm only on Instagram, so you can find me at Liz Ridgway Fitness on Instagram. If you don't have Instagram, I do have a website. So periodically throughout the year, I run classes. And so that's like a booking website, but you can also contact me if it's PT related.
That is that Liz
So that'll be Liz
ridgefitness.com, is it?
Ridgway,
Oh,
LizRidgwayFitness.com. Yes. So
yeah,
you'll be
okay.
able to find me. There's a little contact section there. I'll do my best to answer. It'll drop me an email, or you could send me an email at lizridgwayfitness@gmail.com.
Okay. And now, thank you for that. That's if you're watching this on YouTube, which you must be at this point, it's on the description below. Okay, so it's all there. Just look down and you'll get all of the details that you need. Um, Liz, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you for chatting away. Thank you for answering those questions. And some of them were quite sort of technical questions as well. So thank you very much for doing that. Everybody else as well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for getting involved. Thank you for asking your questions. And I have to say, we love doing these things. Liz and I were talking about this, that, these things are just kind of fun. Just before we came live on this. So it's fun for us to do it, and hopefully it's fun for you guys to listen to it. So thank you again. Thank you, Liz, again. Everybody enjoy your day, whatever it is that you're doing next. And until next time, we will see you then. Until then, take care, everybody, and bye. Bye, everybody. Take it easy. Bye.